Okay, and we're just going to toast up these seasonings. Bring out some of the flavor. Leftover chopped up stuff that we had from the other vegetables. Put it in here to help the stock. I wish you guys could smell it in here. It smells so good. Almost there. You really want to toast it until the fragrance of the spices come out. Once you can smell them really nicely in the air like a fresh potpourri, then we can move it into the bag. Cover it and let it come to a boil and marinate all those sauces into that soup. You want to let it steep for about an hour. The longer you let it steep, the more, you know, the flavors develop. But for people who don't have a lot of time, I'd say give it about an hour and you should have a good flavor. But you want to keep an eye on your broth too, because you don't want to lose too much broth to steaming. You want it to simmer, not rolling boil. So once you get it up into to a hard boil, bring your temperature down to a medium low, and let it simmer during this process so it can really develop the flavors. Or chicken stock to make the pho, and then they add the seasonings to it. Let me try it now. See how it tastes. It's nice and clear. That's what you want out of a good pho, is a nice clear broth. Tell me if I need to add more chicken stock. No. No, just let it simmer down, yeah? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, now that our broth is almost ready, now we prepare the meat. Okay, right now we're cutting up the meat, and what I'm doing is right along here you can see the tendon line, and what you want to do is you want to try and get those off because nobody likes chewy meat. Okay, so I'm going through and I'm checking for tendon that would make the meat nice and tough, and then we're going to cut it on a bias on the angle because it just looks prettier that way. And you can cut your steak or your beef, your pork, whatever you want to put into your pho. You can put whatever you honestly want. You can use pork, then sliced. Pork, you just want to make sure you cook it all the way through. Whereas beef, you can allow it to be a little red on the inside and it's okay. Now we use the small steaks, the New York strip steaks, because these ones that we get from our market, They come in smaller packs, and they're much more easier, user-friendly to handle. You can use any different cut you want. We prefer using this one. It's our own taste, but everybody has their own. Use whatever you want. You could use a chuck, you can use a sirloin, hell, you can even use a London round, a London broil. But just make sure when you're cutting, you want to try and keep everything as even as possible, so uniformity, so that way it'll cook evenly. And you don't want to put too much in anybody's bowl, because if you put too much in anybody's bowl, some of the meat won't cook at all, and it'll completely cool down your soup for you to where the soup is not hot anymore. So where you want the soup to be hot, you want a nice hot broth. Whenever you eat a soup, you think a nice hot broth. So definitely you want to watch for that. So then just cut them all up like so. Simple, nothing fancy. If you have the ones, the meat where you can see the heavy grains, of course you want to do a cross cut, because of course it'll be nice and soft. And you always want your sauce to be piping hot. For us, we put the raw meat into the bowl and let the hot broth bring it to temperature, because it's beef. Beef can be treated that way. You don't want to overcook your beef, so you want to add it in right as you're putting the hot broth in. The steaming, piping hot broth will cook the beef to perfection. And if you cut them all evenly and thinly, all you would have to do is stir your bowl up, and the broth will cook the meat for you without overdoing it. So, yeah. But like I said, this is the meat we use. We're using a New York strip. It had a really good price from our market. So that's why we're going with this one. And it really does cook. It does cook well with what we're doing tonight. So I would recommend using it. You don't have to. Once again, I'm going to say it again. You don't have to. Please, by all means, use whatever meat you're comfortable with. You don't have to use something just because somebody said it. Find your own. Add your own little touch. You don't like something, take it out. You know, the broth itself will always be the same, but the inside fixings, go ahead and think of something that you like. You could go with zucchinis. You could do all types of stuff, from squashes to other root vegetables. Like, it's all up to you. And even the vegetation you put inside. We use cabbage because it's more available, readily available in our market near us. So that's why we're using regular whitehead cabbage. Normally we would use Napa. We would use a Napa cabbage, because Napa cabbage goes really well with this, the flavor. You could also use a mustard greens. If you like the tart, you can add mustard greens, collard greens. Collard greens I would go against, because you want a green that you can eat lightly cooked. You don't want to overcook your vegetables either, because you lose all the goodness that comes inside of them naturally. So by just dipping these vegetables and whatnot in the broth will give you more than enough flavor and textures. Bean sprouts. Bean sprouts is another really good one to go inside of here. We couldn't find any. Our local market didn't have any fresh ones. So we are unable to use that. So we're going to use celery instead. Like I said, you can use any vegetation you want. I would recommend using something on a leafy green side. There's kai choy, bok choy, ang choys. There's the choy family there. You know, there's a lot you can do, and they have all the different forms of cabbages you can use too. It's definitely up to your taste and your preference. This is how we eat ours. So I mean, if you don't want to eat yours that way, that's fine. You know, in fact, if you have any recommendations or things that you would like to see us put in next time we make this, why don't you leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that you guys can keep up with all things Hawaiian can cook. Use whatever meat you want. Okay, this is not one of those set recipe things. Once you have a good stock going, a good base of the soup, you can go at anything you want. Heck, you can even use lamb or veal. My recommendation, make sure they're evenly cut, 1, and 2, that they're thinly sliced so you have room. Now, to add more flavor to our stock, we're going to take our meat and we are going to add our meat, the leftover trimmings, the tendons, into the stock. Right now the stock has been going for a while. I'd say approximately long time, and yeah. So I mean, look at the color of the broth already. I mean, you can see it. It's really nice. It's coming out, but yet it's still clear. You really want that. You want it to be clear. That's a real big thing for pho. It's a clear broth. Be it beef stock, chicken stock, vegetable stock, whatever you feel like it. That's the beauty of this. It's a pretty much open for whatever you want soup. Okay, so the more things you add in here, the more flavor profile you can build. However, just be careful to watch what you're doing as you put things inside, because you don't want things with overwhelming flavors, because they'll come in and change the taste, the flavor of your pho. Okay, and I put them in their little balls, put them in little portions, so that way when it's time to put them in the bowl, you pick up a portion, and that's the one steak. So yeah. Now don't forget, once you're set with this part right here, we're going to plastic wrap it and we're going to put it in the ice box for a few until we're ready to serve. That way the meat doesn't start to brown up or change color or start to warm up for you. Okay, now we're just going to get this guy covered up. Nice piece of saran wrap. Now make sure it's nice and sealed tight. If you want to use a airtight container, Ziploc, you can. I just use the plate because it's a lot easier to work with, and when we're done, we just clean up the mess and throw it away. This is where we spice it up. Now that it's got the depth of flavor that we're looking for, now we add our spice, so we can slowly spice it up to our taste so it's not overboard. A lot of people just throw the spices in the beginning. The thing is, the longer dried up spices sit in soup or stews and cook out, they actually get stronger as time goes on. So if you don't like it too spicy, if you don't like spice at all, go ahead. If you like more spice, you can use chilies, jalapenos, ghost chilies, whatever suits your fancy. Like I said, this is a pretty open recipe. So I mean, try it and make whatever tweaks and whatnot that you would like for your own. But right now our broth is looking fantastic. We're gonna let that spice turn up, and while we're waiting for the spice to turn up, we're gonna go ahead and get started on our noodles. Now the noodles we're using today is gonna be egg noodles. We're using the thin vermicelli size egg noodles. You can buy these like this at your Asian market or at your local markets, but mostly at the Asian markets, and it's the egg noodles. Or you can make your own, but these are the ones that we use because of portion control. Now a little note, when you're using the egg noodles that come like this, okay, I just want to make sure that everybody knows, you don't put the whole container, like all of this inside, because of the way it cooks. It's perfect portion size. They clump up, some of them don't cook evenly, it just turns into a giant mess, and I made that mistake last time. So we're gonna do it individual bowls, and let's get started. We want rolling boiling water, and because we are doing noodles, of course, you always want to put salt, a nice pinch of salt before you get started. And then for our serving size, we're going to put 2 to get things started. We're going to go with 2, and you're just going to let it boil for about 3 minutes. And once all the noodles are loose and running through the water, you stir it occasionally. Then you want to go ahead and move them to the bowl after the 3 minutes is up, and then we start making happiness. And as you can see now, after about a minute in here, it's already starting to loosen up really nicely. Don't forget, please, a lot of people make this mistake. Wait till your water has come to a rolling boil before adding your noodles. Even when you're going to set in a new set, let it reboil itself, so that way it has the heat. If not, it takes longer than 3 minutes to cook properly. Now from here, once our stock is ready, what we're going to do after that, you can see over here the oils that are coming out of the chilies. Okay, we added no oil in here, but yeah, we got all this nice oil. That's chili oil. As we stir it, it's going to add spice, so there's the heat that we're looking for, but it's not going to be too overpowering. I'd say about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of chili flake. If you were going to use the real deal and real chilies, about half of that, because those have much more flavor. Okay, so we're going to stir it in and get that goodness in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do an extraction. We're going to scrape out all of this stuff that's inside of here and take it out. So all we have left is a nice big pot of broth. If you do happen to get chilies on yours, just go ahead and use the strainer like that. Dip it in the water and the sauce a little bit, and it'll come out. You want to take all that stuff out of there. If some of the cabbage or some of the meat is still in there, it's okay. It's not going to kill you. It's just you wouldn't want to serve anybody, hard vegetables or things that they're not accustomed to. Me, I'm going to eat these tendons. Oh yeah. Now out with the bag. Now just remember, you do not have to take the stuff out. You could leave it in if you want. I used the bad parts, or the parts that are not so super edible, to make the stock. That way I try and use as least amount of waste as possible. That's the concept behind that. You want to try and use everything. Like these parts of the celery stalk, although a little tough now that they've been cooked down some, definitely really good to eat. And it looks like we got all we could without going overboard. Oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. Here we go. Almost got caught slipping. Now, like I said earlier, you're welcome to leave the stuff in. We sift the extras out so we can get the broth, because that's what we did it all for. And normally, someone who wants to add these items to their plate, they can just go ahead and set them on the side. Look at all that yummy goodness. Can't tell me that don't look good. And if it does, oh well. It is what it is. All right. All the big chunks are out now. Our noodles should be done. Okay, about 3.5 minutes have passed, and you can see the noodles have gotten nice and bright white. They're very loose and easy to work with. And now we're going to transfer it to a bowl. You want to try and strain out as much of the water, but you don't want to let it all go, because some of that starch water will actually be good for the stock that goes into the bowl. Okay. Now we have our noodles, we have our broth. Let's assemble. Now first we're going to start with our vegetables. I like celery, so I got some cut celery, cabbage. We're going to work our way around the bowl. I like a little more cabbage than everybody else does. And then, if you guys remember that meat lump that we made earlier, Then, not a lot of people like this, but I like me some onion. Get that bite in there. And then we add our meat wad right over here. Okay, now let's make some stock. Now we got our lovely stock here and stirring it up to get all that chili oils and whatnot mixed. And then how I like to do it is I start from the meat side and come around. And as you can see, as I'm pouring the broth onto the meat, it is starting to cook off already. There we go. Now we do the final touches. Some green onion, some Thai basil, there you have it. Hawaiian can cook. Pho. Yeah. Sauce. If you like this video and look forward to other videos, stay tuned to our channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified of every time we post something new. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Remember, sauce. Mm.